Ranger screamed like I've never heard before. My sweet service dog, my lifeline, was rolling on the ground, gasping for air, his eyes burning. Karen stood over him with a can of industrial-grade dog repellent, still pressing the nozzle. "It's not lethal," she snapped. "But maybe now he'll learn to respect the rules." I was frozen for half a second. Then everything blurred. Ranger, confused and blinded, bolted straight for the road. I dropped my coffee, leapt off the porch and ran, barefoot, heart pounding, praying nothing would hit him. He stopped inches from traffic, shaking. I collapsed next to him, holding him, whispering, "You're okay. You're okay." The woman who attacked my service dog was the president of our HOA. This isn't just a story about a bad neighbor. It's about power, control, and what happens when a bully finally crosses the wrong line. And it all started with a fake HOA rule and a clipboard. Before we get into the full story, I just want to ask you a small favor. If you care about protecting service animals and standing up to bullies like this, please tap the like button. It really helps more people see this. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button. We share real stories like this every single day. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We always love seeing how far our community reaches. I didn't move to Coldwater Glen for the neighbors. I moved there because the rent was manageable, the area was quiet, and there were walking trails where I could breathe again. My days were pretty simple. Keep to myself, take Ranger for walks, attend my therapy sessions, and try like hell to stay grounded. Ranger's my golden retriever, but more than that, he's my service dog. My shadow. My alarm clock when the nightmares come back. My reminder that the world isn't always out to get me. He's trained to detect PTSD episodes and pull me back to reality. Without him, I'd probably still be stuck in that dark hole I crawled out of after I got home from deployment. He wears his vest, walks with calm precision, and never causes problems. The guy's more professional than most people I know. And if there's one thing I've learned the hard way, it's that when you depend on a service animal, you learn your rights inside and out. The Americans with Disabilities Act is burned into my brain. So when a woman I'd never seen before marched up to me on my very first afternoon in the neighborhood, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon, I braced myself. "You the new tenant in 6C?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." I kept it polite. She glanced down at Ranger, who was sitting perfectly still at my side, vest and all. "I don't believe I approved a dog for that unit." I paused. "He's a service animal, protected under federal law." She clicked her tongue and wrote something on her clipboard without another word. "People are always finding loopholes," she muttered, turning away. I stood there for a minute, watching her walk back toward the other side of the cul-de-sac, heels clicking on the pavement. It wasn't the first time someone gave me that look. But it was the first time it came with office supply accessories. That evening I found a note on my door. "Please be advised, your lawn exceeds acceptable height per HOA Code 3.2b. I just moved in that day. I figured it was a mistake. The next morning I cut the grass anyway. No big deal. 2 days later, another notice. Trash bins were visible from the curb for 48 minutes after scheduled pickup. I laughed at first. 48 minutes? But fine. Next time I set a timer on my phone. Then came the third. Mailbox paint color does not match HOA approved swatch list. I stared at the note in my hand. It had a smiley face drawn next to her signature. A smiley face. That's when it started to feel personal. I started asking around. Most neighbors smiled politely, but their eyes dropped when I mentioned her name. "Karen?" one guy said half under his breath. "She's a little intense." "What do you mean?" I asked. He leaned in, glancing around like someone might be listening. "She once gave my wife a citation for hanging a wind chime. Said it was a noise violation." It wasn't long before I learned her full name. Karen Prescott, HOA president of Coldwater Glen. According to local legend, she'd lived here since the development opened and treated the community like her personal kingdom. Clipboard and all. After a week of silence, another note showed up on my porch. "Dog barking noted at 6:14 a.m. Please maintain quiet hours." That morning, Ranger hadn't made a sound. I'd been up with him, sitting on the porch in silence, drinking my coffee. We watched the sun rise over the trees. He just laid there, breathing. That's when I started to document everything. I took photos of every violation note, logged every walk with timestamps, set up a cheap security cam facing the front yard. I wasn't paranoid, I was prepared. Then one morning I spotted her again, standing on the corner, just watching, clipboard in hand. Same beige sweater, same white sneakers. I waved. She didn't wave back. That day, a notice appeared in my mailbox, not the front door this time. Anonymous complaint, Dog was seen off-leash on private green space. It wasn't true. I had video. I emailed the HOA board. Attached the footage. No response. I called the number listed on their site. It went to voicemail. I sent a physical letter. Nothing. Then something strange happened. I received a letter in an envelope that looked official, printed return address HOA letterhead, but the paper inside was crooked, the font slightly off. It claimed new rules were going into effect immediately, and that service animals had to be registered with the board and approved for behavioral safety. It also said violations could result in removal of the animal from the property. That was illegal. I knew it was illegal. But the worst part? The letter was dated 2 weeks earlier, and there was no record of it being sent to anyone else. I showed it to the neighbor across the street, an older woman named Beverly who had lived there for 12 years. I didn't get one, she said. Karen's been trying to push weird stuff through since her husband left. She's gotten worse. That night as I was taking Ranger out for his final walk, he froze. He sniffed the air, ears pinned back. I followed his gaze to a tree near the corner of my yard. Something metallic glinted between the branches. I walked over. Tucked up in the leaves was a tiny camera, mounted with Velcro to the tree trunk. It was pointed directly at my front door. I didn't touch it. I took a photo, then went back inside and filed a complaint with the HOA and the non-emergency police line. No reply. Just a new notice the next morning. Dog was observed staring aggressively at passing pedestrians. Please correct behavior. I laughed out loud. Ranger? Aggressive? But inside I was starting to crack. I'd seen control before. I'd seen people use power to crush others. And I was watching it happen again, one clipboard note at a time. I told myself she was just bored. That maybe it would stop. It didn't. The HOA meeting was scheduled for a Thursday evening at 6:30. Room B in the Coldwater Glen Community Center, same place they hosted bingo and buns, night, whatever the hell that was. I didn't plan to go. I'd already sent my complaint about the fake letter and the camera in the tree. I figured that was enough. But that afternoon I found another note taped to my door. This one wasn't from Karen. It was typed, no signature. HOA member attendance strongly encouraged. Items discussed may affect your property rights. That's how they got you. Say property rights, and everyone shows up. I left Ranger at home. He doesn't like crowded rooms. He's good at sensing tension and I didn't want him picking up on mine. But if I'd brought him, things might have gone differently. The room was packed. Folding chairs, lukewarm lemonade on a table, and that weird low hum of neighbors pretending to be civil. Karen sat at the front, behind a folding table, her name printed in bold letters on a card, Karen Prescott, OA President. Next to her sat Carl, the treasurer, who looked like he hadn't said no to her in 15 years. Karen cleared her throat. Thank you all for being here. We'll be reviewing proposed updates to our community guidelines. First on the agenda, animal control and neighborhood safety. She said it like it was a public health emergency. She glanced around the room, eyes pausing briefly on me. We're proposing a new measure that requires all animals, including service animals, to be registered with the HOA board and wear board-issued identification while on shared property. A few people murmured. Karen raised her hand. This is for the safety of our children, our elderly residents, and our property. We've had complaints. She looked directly at me. I felt my stomach knot. I waited for her to finish speaking, then raised my hand. She nodded, barely. I just want to clarify, I said. Service animals are protected under federal law. The ADA explicitly prohibits this kind of registration requirement. It's not just unnecessary, it's illegal. Karen didn't miss a beat. Well, the ADA is a federal guideline, she said, flipping through a stack of printed papers. But Coldwater Glen is a private community. We have the right to set our own standards. Someone in the back said, wait, that can't be right. Karen snapped, I'm speaking. She turned back to me. We've had several residents express concerns about aggressive behavior. This rule helps protect everyone. My jaw tightened. You mean my dog? Ranger has never. She held up her hand. This is not a personal attack. If you feel targeted, that's on you. I looked around. A few people avoided my gaze. One man seated near the door looked genuinely confused. Others just stared at their feet. I didn't say another word. There was no point. After the meeting, I walked out fast, trying to clear the heat from my face. I was halfway to my car when I heard her voice behind me. You like causing trouble, huh? I stopped. Karen stood 10 feet back, hands on her hips. That same fake smile stretched across her face like a mask slipping. "This could have been easy," she said. "But if you want to be difficult, I can be difficult too." I didn't respond. I didn't give her the satisfaction. She leaned in slightly. "You think your special status makes you untouchable. It doesn't. The rules apply to everyone." Then she turned and walked off. Back home, Ranger met me at the door, tail wagging. He always knew when I was upset, even when I tried to hide it. He nudged my arm gently with his nose, then curled up beside me on the couch. I sat there in the dark, letting the anger settle into my chest like a stone. The next day, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. It was short. A man's voice, low and nervous. "I used to live in your unit. Don't trust her. She'll escalate. She always escalates." Click. That night, I noticed a new camera in a different tree. I walked across the yard and found it taped to the opposite side of a low-hanging branch, angled directly toward my bedroom window. That was the moment I stopped pretending this was normal. I called the HOA emergency line again. Left a message. Nothing. I emailed Carl, the treasurer. Got a bounce back. I called the police. They said without proof she'd put it there wasn't much they could do unless it was on my property. I was losing patience. Fast. Later that week, I took Ranger out for a walk around the block. We didn't go far, just past the mailbox cluster and down toward the small park on the east side. He needed the movement. I needed the air. As we passed one of the benches, a man I didn't recognize stood up. Mid-60s, flannel shirt, soft eyes. "You're the vet with the golden, right?" I nodded cautiously. He glanced around. "I shouldn't say anything, but she tried to fine me last year for hanging an American flag. Said it violated color uniformity." I blinked. "You serious?" "Dead serious." He paused. "She collects people. Until they either fall in line or move." I didn't know what to say. He nodded toward Ranger. "He's a good boy. She's got no business bothering you." Then he walked away. Back home, I checked the porch cam footage again. At 2:17 a.m., a figure approached my house. Wearing dark clothes. Carrying something. They paused by the tree with the new camera. Then disappeared off-screen. In the morning, there was a plastic bag near my fence. Inside it? Rotting meat. No note. No explanation. Ranger sniffed it and recoiled. He wouldn't go near that side of the yard for the rest of the day. And just when I thought it couldn't get any more surreal, I got another violation notice. This one read, "Dog was observed sitting on front porch in a manner that may intimidate passing residents. Consider relocating animal during peak hours." That was it. No signature. No date. Just taped there like a threat dressed up as courtesy. I stood on the porch holding the paper, my hand shaking. Inside, Ranger looked up at me, tail thumping the floor once. I sat beside him, rubbed behind his ears and whispered, "We're not going anywhere." 3 days passed with no new notes. No cameras. No rotting meat. Just silence. The kind of silence you get in movies right before the door creaks open. I told myself it was fine. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe I was just wound too tight. PTSD does that. It plays tricks on you. Makes you see ghosts in bushes. But Ranger knew better. He started following me more closely. Sitting in front of the door instead of at my feet. He'd stare at the windows longer than usual, ears twitching at sounds I couldn't hear. Something was still off. That Saturday, I went to get my mail and found an envelope with no name, no stamp. Just slid in with the flyers and credit card offers. Inside, a single piece of paper. "Your dog will not be your shield forever." No signature. No HOA logo. Nothing. I stared at the words, willing them to disappear. They didn't. I showed the note to the local police. They made a copy, logged a report. That was it. "No direct threat to your person," the officer said. "But someone's escalating. Document everything." I was already doing that. What I hadn't been doing was sleeping. That night, I sat in the living room with Ranger beside me. I didn't turn on the lights. Just stared out the window at the stillness. That's when I saw the beam. A red laser flicking across my porch like a searchlight. It hovered near the camera I'd installed by the door, then vanished. No footsteps. No sound. Just light. I didn't go outside. I didn't take the bait. The next morning, I stepped onto the porch and found the camera lens cracked. Not shattered, just scratched. Deliberate. That was when I knew something was coming. Sunday morning felt like a reset. Crisp air. Birds. A neighbor across the street watering plants. kids chalking on the sidewalk. Even Karen was nowhere to be seen. So I made coffee. Poured a second bowl of water for Ranger. Opened the front door and sat on the steps. Ranger lay at my feet, eyes half closed, ears relaxed for the first time in days. For a few minutes it felt like nothing was wrong. Then the air shifted. A car door slammed, fast and hard. Footsteps on pavement. Too quick, too direct. I looked up. Karen. Khaki shorts, navy polo, white sneakers, sunglasses perched on top of her head like a tiara. And in her hand, a silver canister. Not a clipboard this time. I stood slowly. Karen, don't. She kept walking. I warned you, she said, loud enough for the neighbor across the street to hear. This dog has been a threat to community peace for weeks. Ranger stood up, alert but not aggressive. His tail didn't move. He's a service animal, I said, holding a hand out in front of me. Back off. This isn't about you, she snapped. This is about standards. This community has them. And you've ignored them since day one. She was 10 feet away now. Karen, I said calmly but firmly, I'm asking you to stop. Put the can down. She stopped, but only for a second. Then she lifted the can, aimed at Ranger's face and sprayed. A hard, ugly hiss filled the air. Ranger let out a strangled yelp and stumbled backward, pawing at his eyes. Time slowed. I lunged forward, grabbing Ranger, pulling him to my chest, shielding him with my body. The smell hit next, something chemical, bitter, sharp enough to burn my throat. What the hell is this? I shouted. Just a deterrent, Karen said, stepping back like she'd done nothing wrong. A non-lethal spray. To remind him who's in charge. Ranger was shaking in my arms, eyes squeezed shut, muzzle soaked. I could feel his whole body quivering. I carried him inside straight to the sink. Ran lukewarm water over his face, whispering to him, trying to stay calm. He whimpered. Flinched at the sound of the water. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the towel twice. When he finally settled, I checked his breathing. Still rapid. Still scared. But alive. I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? My service dog was attacked with a chemical agent. The person who did it is my HOA president. She sprayed him in the face. I need officers here now. The dispatcher didn't ask many questions. Just confirmed the address and said help was on the way. 15 minutes later, 2 cruisers rolled up. I opened the door with Ranger beside me, towel still around his neck, eyes red. One officer stayed with me. The other went across the street. I could see her from the window, standing on her porch like a queen, gesturing wildly, pointing toward my house. The officer she spoke to didn't flinch. When they both came back, I was ready, folder in hand. Ranger's certification. His vet papers. My own diagnosis records. Everything. The officer nodded, flipping through the documents. She admitted to spraying him, he said. Claims it was her civic duty. My hands balled into fists. Sir, the officer continued, interfering with a service animal is a federal offense under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Her actions also meet the criteria for animal cruelty under state law. We're placing her under arrest. I didn't smile. I didn't say thank you. I just nodded. Across the street, a small crowd had gathered. 3 neighbors. Then 5. Then more. Phones out. Eyes wide. Karen screamed as the handcuffs clicked on. You people are sheep. He doesn't belong here. You're all weak. They walked her to the cruiser. She thrashed once. Twice. And then the door closed. Back inside, Ranger lay on the couch, finally still. I knelt beside him, scratched behind his ears. You did good, I whispered. Outside, the sun kept shining. But the whole street felt different now. Quieter. Like it was finally ours again. Karen was gone. Or at least that's what I thought when the cruiser pulled away. The street went quiet after that. People lingered a little, whispered, then scattered. Nobody said anything to me that day. Just side glances. Nods. The kind of acknowledgement you give someone who's just walked through fire. I didn't sleep much that night. Ranger was still jumpy. Every time a car passed or a branch scraped the window, he lifted his head and whined. I lay on the couch with him, one hand on his side so he'd know he wasn't alone. The next morning, I opened the door and found a folded piece of paper on the porch. Not taped. Not stuffed in the mailbox. Just sitting there, weighted down with a smooth river stone. Read. We saw what she did. We're sorry we didn't speak up sooner. No name. No address. Just that. It hit harder than I expected. At 10 a.m., 2 officers came back to follow up. One was the same guy who'd arrested her. We need a full statement, he said. If you're pressing charges. I am. We sat at the kitchen table. Ranger lay at my feet, eyes closed, ears still twitching at every sudden sound. I gave them everything: the violation letters, the fake HOA documents, photos of the cameras, the anonymous threats, even the bag of rotten meat. They asked good questions. Took their time. Wrote everything down. Then one of them, the older cop with the wedding ring and the tired face, looked up and said, "She ever lay hands on you?" "No," I said. "Just the dog." He nodded. "Good. That makes it cleaner. Federal and state statutes are clear on this. Service animal interference carries a heavy penalty." He paused. "But you should know, she's already claiming the dog was aggressive. Said she was defending herself. She had a pressurized spray can and Ranger was sitting still on my porch," I said. "There's footage. We've seen it. From your porch cam. It matches your timeline." I exhaled slowly. "So what now?" "She's been charged. Processing her now. You'll get a case number and court date. But don't be surprised if she posts bail by the end of the day. She'll come back. Legally, we can't prevent her from returning to her home. Not yet. But any contact with you, verbal, physical, through third parties, violates her bail conditions. Let us know immediately if that happens." I nodded. Ranger let out a long sigh, almost like he understood every word. Around 1 p.m. I got a knock on the door. It was Carl, the HOA treasurer. Sweaty, holding a clipboard that looked like it hadn't been used in years. I wanted to speak with you," he said. "Do you have a moment?" I didn't answer. Just stepped aside and let him in. He sat stiffly in the kitchen chair like it might bite him. His hands trembled slightly as he laid out the clipboard. "I didn't know," he said. "I mean, I saw the violations. I just thought, that's how she ran things." "You never questioned her?" He winced. "She told us questioning her would count as insubordination. She said she could have us removed from the board for breach of process." I'm ashamed to admit it, I believed her. I didn't say anything. "We're holding an emergency meeting tonight," Carl continued. "Several residents requested it after what happened. We're voting on whether to suspend her from the board, pending legal outcome. Does that actually happen in this neighborhood?" He nodded. "Not often. But the bylaws allow for it." Before he left, he looked at Ranger and said softly, "He's a good dog." The meeting was at 7 o'clock. This time the community center was full. Not folding chair full, standing room only. I sat in the back. Ranger lay at my feet, vest on. Eyes calm. Perfect posture. Even after everything, he still wanted to work. Carl stood at the front, clipboard in hand, voice shaking but steady. "We're here to vote on a motion for emergency suspension of President Karen Prescott from her role as HOA president," he read. "Effective immediately, pending legal resolution of ongoing criminal matters. The motion also proposes a temporary leadership transition, with the board vice president assuming duties until further notice." He looked around. "No debate will be allowed on this issue. We will proceed with a vote." He passed out slips of paper. Simple yes or no. I watched people scribble. Some fast. Some slow. Some like their pen weighed 10 pounds. They collected the papers. Counted them on the spot. Carl cleared his throat again. By a vote of 38-0, the motion passes. A low hum went through the room. Someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole place echoed with polite but pointed applause. I looked around and saw people I barely knew. The woman who jogged every morning at 6, the teenager who skateboarded on the cul-de-sac, the man who always pretended not to notice Ranger. Now they were nodding at me. For the first time in Coldwater Glen, I felt like I wasn't invisible. As I stood to leave, a woman touched my arm. "I'm so sorry," she said. "My husband's in a chair. We have a service dog too. I didn't know how far she'd go." "She crossed a line," I said. "She's crossed so many." Back home I found something new on the HOA website. Karen's name, removed from the board directory. Her bio, gone. Under President, vacant, pending election. I took a screenshot. Not to gloat. To remember that sometimes the system works. Not fast. Not loud. But when it moves, it moves. That night, I gave Ranger a little peanut butter on his favorite toy. He licked it quietly, tail thumping once or twice. I lay back on the floor beside him. Stared at the ceiling fan. Outside, a breeze rustled the trees. Not harsh. Not threatening. Just wind. For the first time in weeks, I didn't sleep with the lights on. Karen showed up to court wearing a pearl necklace and a blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She had a new lawyer, one of those silver-haired guys with TV smiles and designer folders. She didn't look like a neighborhood tyrant anymore. She looked like a politician in trouble. But her eyes? Still sharp. Still scanning the room like she owned it. I was sitting 3 rows back with Ranger beside me. He had his vest on, calm as ever. He always knew when to be strong for me. When they called the case, Karen stood and tried to speak before the judge even finished reading the charges. Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. I was trying to enforce reasonable standards. The judge cut her off with a raised hand. Miss Prescott, this court is not interested in your neighborhood power struggles. What we are here to discuss is your assault on a federally protected service animal and your ongoing pattern of harassment. Her lawyer jumped in trying to shift the narrative. She has no prior criminal record. She served her community diligently and abused that role, the judge snapped. Her actions were not only reckless but dangerous. Then came the evidence. My porch cam footage played on a screen for the entire room. The canister. The hiss. Ranger's yelp. My voice breaking as I tried to get him inside. The courtroom was silent. Karen didn't move. Then the HOA letters. The false violation notices. The fake, anonymous complaints. Even the camera photos from my trees. The prosecution laid it out like a slow-motion car crash. When they asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood. I didn't read from a page. I just said what needed to be said. I served this country. I came home broken. My service dog saved my life more than once. He's never hurt anyone. And the idea that someone could hurt him, just to prove a point, should scare all of us. The judge nodded once. Then turned to Karen. Miss Prescott, you clearly believed your position made you untouchable. That the rules were suggestions. That power meant permission. He leaned forward, hands clasped. Well, here's a rule for you. One that matters. Federal law protects service animals, and the people who rely on them. You broke that law. And now you will face the consequences. Karen's expression finally cracked. Her hands trembled slightly as the sentence was read aloud. 30 days in county jail. $5,000 fine. 200 hours of community service, at an animal shelter. Mandatory education on disability rights. Permanent ban from serving on any HOA board in the state. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. She didn't answer. As the bailiff approached, she looked at me. Her mouth moved. This isn't over. But we both knew it was. She was let out in handcuffs. No more clipboard. No more control. Just another person who finally hit a wall she couldn't push through. After the sentencing, a man from the audience walked over and shook my hand. About time someone stood up to her. And another woman, the jogger, knelt and scratched Ranger behind the ears. You're a good boy, she said softly. He leaned into her hand. Justice had spoken. And the whole damn room had listened. Ranger and I walked out together side by side. The door closed behind us. For good. She's gone. And we're still here. Ranger's fine. I'm healing. And Coldwater Glen finally feels like home. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If you believe service animals deserve real protection, hit that like button and subscribe. We share real stories like this every week. And hey, drop a comment, let me know where you're watching from. We read every one.